Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Property Manager Part 4. In this final training, we're going to show you how to create this amazing single-click dashboard complete with variable date range, and I'm going to show you step-by-step from scratch writing every line of code. It's going to be an incredible training you won't want to miss. I can't wait. Let's get started. All right, welcome back. I really appreciate you joining me this week for part 4 of the Rental Property Manager. In this final training of the multi-part, we're going to be covering this dashboard. I'm going to show you how to create an amazing single-click dashboard complete with income and expense by property, including a report and a graph, a tenant detail list, and a monthly tenants. That's going to be created all on a single click. We're going to do it from scratch, so every line of code, every formula, every format you're going to see, I'm going to do it right in front of you. So I hope you'll join us for the entire training because it's going to be groundbreaking. If you do like these trainings, I do create them each and every Tuesday. The download is absolutely free. All you need to do is click the link down in the description using either your email or Facebook, and I'm going to send that right to you right away. So don't worry about that. If you do like these trainings, I do have a full 175 pack of workbooks that you can download for just $66. That's on promotion. So that helps us keep these trainings for free. Another way, a great way to do it, if you like dashboards and you like creating dashboards, I'm doing the same thing in an incredible accounting application, and it's going to look just like this. So if you want to learn how to create this kind of dashboard, I'm going to show you how inside the mentorship program. Inside the mentorship program is where it's all happening. I'm going to create an incredible accounting application, and you're going to learn how to create a dashboard. That's myexcelmentor.com for more information. In this report we're created, this is an inventory on hand worksheet. You're going to be able to change the inventory on hand, setting the correct differences, and then automatically making that adjustment. It's going to set that in the accounting and automatically going to refresh and adjust the reports. We have an inventory record sheet where, based on inventory that you need, if you want to create a purchase order based on required inventory, all you would do is this and just create the purchase order. It's automatically going to create the purchase order just on the items that you need automatically. So that's a really cool thing. In this dashboard, we're also going to have bill payments. I've got a net worth graph. I've got customer payments, purchases by vendor, a sales by customer, an aging receivables report, full on filtering, even including sorting, single click sorting. And also we're going to show you how to do inline filtering like this, so you can just filter very simply just by clicking on that. We're going to show a cash flow calendar report, and of course, based on a date range, a balance sheet, a trial balance sheet, a profit and loss with drill down capabilities, and of course a company overview. So I hope you'll join us for that. That's in the mentorship program where we're creating an incredible accounting application. All right, let's get started on this training because there's just so much I want to show you on this. Last week we covered the alerts and reminders. So we showed you how to create these alerts and reminders. That's where we left off. There's one thing that we do need to create. Now that we can create these alert and reminders, we need to automatically set those alerts. So we're going to write the macro that's going to automatically create an alert for you when you turn on your Excel application or you open it up, or any interval you want. We're going to create those alerts. So let's do that right now. It's a very quick macro, and then we're going to get right into the dashboard. So we're going to go into the developer Visual Basic here, and we have alerts and macros. This is what we created last week, and what we wanted to do in this last week, the last training on alerts and reminders, we wanted to get these recent alerts in there. And to do that, what we did is we took in the alerts database here, we took all the data here, we ran it through this particular criteria to notice which ones were alerted on, not alerted on, meaning this is blank, they have not been alerted, and then we got these results. Now I'm going to use exactly the same type of advanced filter, but in this time when I get those results, what I want to do is I want to then sort them by date, just as we did. Then the most recent, if that particular date and time is less than or equal to the current date, then I want to automatically set the reminder. I want to run that reminder automatically based on the name and details. Then I'm going to set the alerted on, and this is where that row number is going to play into action, because once I set that alert, if I'm looping through these, I need to know when to put that alerted on date, meaning we just alerted the user, so we need to take that alerted on date, let them know that we have created that alert. And the best way to do that is to determine the original row. This is original row 7. So we go to original row 7, we place that alerted on date. the next time we run this advanced filter, this one's going to be excluded from this list because it already has an alert on a date. Remember, we're only focused on those with blank, that are blank, alerted on as blank. So if it contains a value, it's going to get ignored in the advanced filter. That is what we're going to do inside the macro now. It's going to be very easy. In fact, it is so similar to the alert that we created there. We're going to copy parts of that. So this particular macro right here, this recent alerts here, load recent alerts, what I want to do is I just simply want to copy parts of this and then continue on down with it. So we don't need to bring in the alert details, but everything else we need to do. So I'm going to copy this right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new macro. So we're going to scroll down here and create a brand new macro, sub, and then alert. And then we'll call this check alerts. Okay, that'll be fine. Check alerts. So we're going to run this macro when the workbook opens, or of course at any interval you want. So now that we have that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply paste in what we've done there. First thing we're going to do is clear in sheet 5. Clear sheet 5 is our alerts and reminders. So we want to clear that. We don't need to clear this in this particular case, so we can get that out. What that did in the previous macro is simply it cleared in this area here. We don't need to clear this because we're not loading in the recent alerts. But what I do want to do is run that advanced filter, determining the last row of data here, getting our criteria here, and then getting those results. So I do want to do that. So let's do that right now. And let's just walk through what we copied and pasted. So I'll determine the last row. If the last row is less than 4, then exit the sub. We're going to run our advanced filter based on that original data, A3 to all the way to H. Let's take a look at that. We may need to change that. All the way to 8. Okay, we're going all the way to 8. That's what I want. I want the results. The criteria is going to be the same, 2 to 3. And we want the results coming from N2 all the way to U2. So that's what we want, and we want them unique. L2 is our criteria. N2 through U2, that is our unique, and we want true. Then what we need to do is once we get those alerts in there, I need to determine the last row. If for some reason this last row is less than 3, that means we have no data, so we need to account for that. So the first thing we're going to do is determine that last row. I'm going to drop this down so we can see both of them at the same time. Now, what is that last row? The last row alert, we're going to base it on column N, which is required. It's our alert ID. We always want to use a required row. Alert ID is required for every alert. So if the last alert row is less than 3, then we're going to exit the sub. Otherwise, we can continue. We're going to clear. We're going to sort by date. This is what the sort we created last time. Based on N3, of course, we're going to base it on P3, the date. Perfect. Now that we have it, now we can continue on. So now we've got our data set. We've sorted it based on date, and we're descending. It means the lowest date, right, up into the newest date. So we want the earliest possible date, and we're going to check. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run a loop. So we're going to call this, let's make sure we've defined alert row up here. We do need to add in alert row, so let's make sure that it is out here. Alert row here's here, so we've got that covered. So now we're going to say for alert row is equal to 3, it was equal to 3 to last alert row, the last alert row. And we've already defined the last alert row right here. So now we're going to run it. Now we close our loop. So next alert row. Okay, so now that we've got that, we can continue on. Well, now what I want to do is I want to determine is we have our date and time. This is where it's nice and handy. We've combined our date and our time into a full date and time. So what I want to know is this date and time, is it before the current date and time, or is it equal to the current date and time? If it's before or equal, then I want to run this alert. So that's what we're going to do right now. If dot range, in this case, make sure we got to add in with sheet 10. We got to add in our end with right here, all the way down here. Let's add that in before we forget. End with. This width here is for the sort, so we've already combined this width, but we need an end width for the sheet, so we covered that. So if, let's continue with our statement now. We're focused on, of course, S is the column and the alert row dot value. If that is less than or equal to the current date and time, which is now, in VBA is now, then what we want to do is I want to create that alert. Okay, so first, what is that alert? I'm going to create an alert message box, and what do I want to include inside that? I'm going to include basically the details of that alert. So maybe what we'll do is we'll do both. We can do the alert name and the details. So let's do that. Let's do message box dot range O, of course, O here, and the alert row and the alert, that's the name, alert row, and VBC, and what we need is, let's say, a new row. We'll go to the next row. Okay, so that's going to get us to the new row, VBCRLF. That's a new line down. So that'll get us there. And what else do we want there? We don't want the end quotes. Then, so I've got the name, then I want the details. So in this case, we're going to put the details, of course, are not O, but they are located in column R. So we can copy this and then paste in the column R here. Change it over to column R. So now we've got the name in O and we've got the details in R. That's going to get us our alert, the alert text. So next up, what do we want to do? I want to determine, I want to set the row now that I know that it's been alerted to. So now what we want to do is I want to determine, I want to put in G, in column G, I want to put the current date and time. I want to put that there because it's now, the alert's been now done. So how do we find that? We look here, we find the row and we put it in G and whatever is here in U. So let's take a look at that. So dot range, G, and what is the row? What is the alert row? It's not this row. It's not the row that we're on. It's the row is here, the original data row. That's why we always put in a formula here, putting in the row. So we know the row when we have the advanced filter. So the original data row is row 7. So I want to take that and put it in. So it's U and the alert row. U and the alert row. That's what we're going to focus on. So G and dot range, U and the alert row. Dot value. Okay, so that's going to equals what? Equals now. That sets the current date and time for the alerted on. Very good, very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to set that up. But now what we want to do is we actually have to be ascending. I want these ascending, right? I want the earliest to that. So that's better. So because we have them descending here, but I really want them ascending, right? Because I want the earliest date and time. So we have to update that sort. In the other one, we do want them descending. This one we want ascending, okay? So now we've got it good. So let's take a look at that. So what about if it's greater than or equal to the current date? Then we can just exit out of the for. Then else, then exit for. Nothing else we can do there if we're already after the current date. In other words, if this date is after the current date, then we can just exit out of the sub. So that's it. So we just run our loop. So let's go ahead and copy that and let's take a look at this. It's currently the 20th. So let's see, it's the 22nd, 21st of January. So this alert, check unit 34, is based on an earlier date. These are based on later dates. So that should work for us. So if I run that macro, we're going to get just that one alert. It's going to put that in row 5 here. It's going to put that current date. So let's take a look at that, run that macro, see if we've got any issues. I'm going to save our workbook. Always before we run a macro, it's good to save. Run it here, and let's see, unit check unit 34. Okay, that's the one that I wanted to run. Click OK, and we have the date and time. Expand this column, we have it. That's exactly what I want. If I rerun this macro, let's rerun it one more time, rerun it macro, you see now there's no alerts to be done, no alert, which is correct, and notice how this is excluded because this is no longer blank. Perfect. So now we have our alerted. What we can do then is pretty much take this, and I'll comment out alerts, check alerts, and then run this when the workbook runs. So if I want to run this when the workbook opens, I click on the workbook feature here, this workbook component. Then what I want to do is I want to click on workbook and then open. Now if I want this to run this, I'm just going to paste it right in here. It's going to run every single time. Of course, I don't want it to run when you guys download this workbook, so I'm just going to comment that out so it doesn't run. But of course, you can uncomment out. It's going to check for alerts every time we open the workbook. Okay, fantastic. I'm glad we got that done. That was it for the alerts. So now we have automated alerts that are going to let us know anytime we've created an alert, and also it's going to let us know you can add alerts and reminders from here. So that's our database. Let's go back to the main. So we've got in the properties, we've now added the properties. We have in our menu here, we've got tenants and units we've created. We're able to add and update units, so that's really, really nice. We also have, let's go ahead and load in a specific building, and we can create units. We can add units in. We have transactions here. We can add in additional transactions here, so that's really, really cool. We also have attachments to those, and of course we have now the alerts and reminders. So what I want to do is I want to combine all this great data that we've just created in these 4 different formats: properties, units, transactions, alerts, and reminders, and put it into a really cool dashboard. And that's just what we're going to do right here. This is the dashboard. We can also get to it using this menu item here, which we covered in 1. So let's focus on this dashboard. I want to create these 3 reports, and the best thing I want to do is create some data and make sure some named ranges. Now I want to focus on this income and expense, but to do that we need to create some specific named ranges to focus on transactions. We have some transactions database. I've got the transaction ID as name, but I want to do others. I want to know the transaction amount because we're going to put that in data, and I also want to know the transaction date, and I also want to know the transaction type. So we should put those into named ranges. So the best way to do that is just to do it right here. So let's go into the formulas, name manager, and then what I've already got transaction ID. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, Control C. Then I'm going to go into new, and I'm going to look at the format. So transaction ID, and I'm going to type in transaction, and let's do one for date. So I'm going to put in date. I'm going to tab down, and I'm going to paste in that. I'm going to make a small change. So instead of offset, right, we can use the count A. Count A is fine for transaction ID in column A. But this one we're focused on date, and our date is located in column F. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to F. I'm going to tab out using the tab key. I'm going to shift tab in, going back in. I'm going to look for the dancing ants. I want to make sure those are around the data, which it is. That's correct. So we've got that. You want to click OK. Now I want another one. I want to do the same thing for transaction amount. So it's trans and then amount. I'm going to tab down here, and then I'm going to do the same thing, except in this case, A, we're not going to focus on column J. That's where our amount is located. J. Okay, again, tab out, tab back in. Make sure it's correct. Good. And the last one, we want transaction type. So new transaction and then type. Okay. Same thing except this time in column I. The type I'm going to put instead of A, we're going to put in I. Tab out, tab in, check. Okay, so great. We've quickly created 3 different named ranges. We now have, if we sort them by name, we have transaction ID, transaction date, transaction amount, and transaction with one more here, type. Okay, so we've done all those. Fantastic. That's really going to help us. Back into, so I also want to know when we have our dashboard, I also want to know be able to set dates and have those reports based on the current date. So if I put in 1/1 here and then I put in, let's just say 12/31, I want that specific report to be run based on those dates. When I change those dates, I want to also have these reports automatically update based on the changed dates. So the best way to handle this is also to make a named range out of these dates. It's easier to use inside formulas. So we're going to do just that right now. We're going to call this from date, and then we're going to call this to dates, and that's easier to use in formulas. So now to date. Of course, you can add calendar pop-ups to this. It's very easy. So, but we're gonna focus on this. So now we have 2 named ranges called from date and to dates. That's going to help us going forward. We also need just a little bit of information here. We've got different reports, and I want to keep track of what reports selected. I also want to highlight the row of what reports selected. So we're going to focus on those 2 things. The first thing I want to do is the selected report. So I'm going to put in selected report here, and I want to know what reports. So let's say we'll call this report number 1, 2, and 3. So we'll just put in 1 or whatever, and then that's going to help us out. Then I also want to know the selected row. What row was selected? Selected, and then row here. Okay, so I also want to know because I want to use conditional formatting 4, 5, 6, or whatever. So let's put in just 4 for some temporary data. And I also want to put in some text here, but we'll get into this, the last thing. So these are really the only information I want. So I'm going to go into highlight these. I'm also just going to drop this down here, and then we'll put some borders all the way around it. Okay, and then left justify that. Okay, I'm going to add some conditional formatting. I'll just go all the way down here as you create more reports because I want to highlight the row here. So conditional formatting, new rule, we use a formula. And so basically in this, we're going to focus on the select row. This B4 equals row and then double parentheses. Okay, so that's it. Now I'm going to give it a format, something very different than what we're looking at. So let's go with a font of bold and white, and we'll choose this white here. And then what I want is a fill, maybe a gradient fill here. So let's go with a fill effects and something similar to what we've been using here. We'll go with this, and then we'll go with the lighter color here. That will definitely contrast it, which is exactly what I want. Click OK. So that's what let's change the font color to white. That's kind of important. So we have that contrast. I thought I did that before. Okay, white. Now it's bold and white. That's what I want. That's the look I'm looking for. Good. So now as we click on here and change reports, we're also going to change the selector. So when this goes to 5 or to 6, it's going to automatically update. So as we select on that, we're going to do that. Let's write a little bit of code to do just that, and we're going to run the reports in a moment. So let's go into the developer just so we can see how that would work, and then we'll go back into that. So we're going to focus primarily on the dashboard here. So focus on the dashboard. We're going to start out with some selection change. When we make a selection change, we want something to happen. Now we're going to focus on just a few cells. What cells are we going to focus on? I'm going to focus on columns D4 all the way down. So if not, intersect, target, and then we're going to focus on D4 and then down as many reports as you have. So if we start out D4 all the way through D, let's just say 10 or whatever it is, we only have 3 though, is nothing. And I also want to make sure D, and we need to make sure there's actually a value in D, right? And range D and the target dot row dot value does not equal empty. Then what do we want to do? Well, then the first thing I want to do is take whatever row it is, I want to place it directly inside B4. So let's do that. Range B4 dot value equals target dot row. So that's going to do, and then the next thing there, we're just going to run the report. We're going to add some macros here. We're running the report. We don't have those macros yet. So now when I select on a specific, it changes that row. Okay, good. So we've got that covered. Pretty good there. So what else do I want to do? Now let's go ahead and focus on some of the reports. Let's go focus on some of the data. The first one I want to do is income and expense by property. And so the idea when we run these dashboards is we have this area here, this main area, this is where we want the report to display. But what we really need is a staging area, an area that where we can set all the formats, set all the reports, set all the column widths, and set everything just the way we want it, and then bring it into this area. When the user clicks on this, bring it into this area, and then so it's going to clear out and bring it into there. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to create this staging area, and I'm going to call that staging. I'm going to bring it all the way over here. I'm going to start it up here. We're going to use the same rows. In other words, if I want this particular row to start in row 4, I also want the staging area report to start in row 4. So that way when I can copy in that information, bring it in here, it's a lot easier. So I'm going to do just that. Row 4 is where we're going to set it, but I'm going to set the other report, which was going to be the staging report, or the as we get it ready. I'm going to start that right here, and let's just say AA4. So what is it that I want in this report? We're going to focus on that first report, which is going to be the income and expense by property. So we're going to do just that. So let's just call this income and expense transactions. It's going to be per property transactions, but it's going to be transactions because I want to know all the income and expense transactions given in a period of time between the from and to date based on that. So income and expense transactions. And what do I want? I want to know the property, which property it was, property name. I want to know the transaction name. And what else do I want to know? I also want to know the date, if there's a specific unit that's involved in that, you know, apartment or unit. I also want to know any details that might have been put in there. And I want to know the type and the amount. Remember, the type could be income or an expense and things like that. So that's important. So now that we have that, let's give it a little bit of format style. Now what we're going to do is I'm not going to use merge and center on here because I'm just going to use merge across center. So let's just highlight this, and what we're going to use is called center across selection, which is center across selection. And that's kind of a nice feature. We don't need to use merge and center. So now let's give it a little bit of a format on this. So we're going to format those cells. And I'm going to give it the fill, and we'll use similar fill effects to what we just did before, which is this color here and then the lighter color here. Okay, that's going to be our, let's see, the lighter color here. Okay, good. That's what I want for the top row. So we're going to click that. And I'm also going to again click the white font so it's contrasting. So font, bold, and then this white down here. Okay, so we've got that. We don't need any borders on that, but we will put some on that. So that's what I want for the top row. Now for the bottom row, let's center that. And then what we'll do is we'll format the cells here. And then we'll go into, again, I'm going to go bold and white on that. And then what we'll do is we'll do a fill effects. We'll start out with that lighter blue and then go to slightly lighter blue. So I'm starting out with this lighter blue. And then I'm just going to select that lighter blue again, except then now I'm going to go back in. I'm going to go into more colors. I'm just going to select a little bit lighter of a color, just a little bit lighter, just so it's got a kind of nice blend. So that gives us a nice look, a nice blend down. Click OK. That's what I want. And we can also probably put some borders around that. Let's take a look at that transaction name. Okay, good. So we've got that. I'll increase some of these fields here. That's good. I like that. Let's put some borders around here. Format those cells, at least the inside borders. And then we'll go ahead and call these white and then this is the white one here. It's off the screen, sorry. Let's go up here. All right, so I'm going to go with this white, and then we'll go inside borders on this. You can't see it, but it's there because it's white. Okay, good. That's a nice look for our report. Everything else will be in black in our report. So we've got our information here. So basically the idea is I want to fill out this information, and then I'm going to bring it in here, copy it. That way, when we bring it in, we can actually change the column widths here just however I like them, and we'll bring in the column widths too. So date would be about this, the amount, good. And there's all the formats too. That way, if I format this currency, which would be a currency, it's going to be really great. Okay, so what do I want? I want to list the property here, then I want to list the transaction name here, but I want to, for each property, I want to list those transactions. So we need a macro to do that. A macro is going to help us understand all the transactions on a per property basis. Then we can list the transactions on that property, and then we'll go to the next property, list those transactions, and the next, and so on. And then what we'll do is we'll get a total for each property. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do that with the macro, of course. So let's write that macro now. All right, if we're going to be running and we want to know all the transactions based between these two dates, based between the from date and to date, I want to know all those transactions. We're going to need an advanced filter based on those two dates to do that. So let's build that advanced filter. It's going to come from the transactions database. That's what we're focused on, these transactions. So basically, I want to know all the transactions based on those two dates. And of course, we're going to go from each property to each property. So I need to know based on those properties. So let's run an advanced filter based on specific properties and see how we can do that. So the first thing what we want to do is create that advanced filter criteria. So let's put on this, perhaps let's go in S. We're going to call this dashboard criteria. And what is the first criteria? We're going to base it on the date, right? Date. Right? So basically make sure when you write date in here, it's exactly the same as this. What I often do is just copy and paste it right in here just to make sure, because it's got to be the same. Okay, and then of course we can copy and paste it. Let's do it the same kind of format, so give it the same, just this purple here, so we'll give it the same so we get looking like, okay, so what do I want on the first date? So basically it's got to be between two dates, between the from and the to dates. So how do we do that? We can write that. It's going to say equals, it's got to be, and then quotation marks, greater than or equal, then the end quotation marks, and the from date, right? It's got to be greater than or equal to from date. We've already written that in. Also, it's got to be less than or equal the to date. So equals, quotation marks, less than or equals, end quotation marks, and the to date. Not today, to date. So that's our criteria, but I've got another criteria. I also want to make sure it's on a specific property. If we're going to load, I want to know all the transactions for property 1, all the transactions for property 2. So we need to put in the property ID as a filter as we run through the properties. So property ID is going to be also the filter. So this is our criteria here. So dashboard criteria. So that's what we're going to focus on there. All right. I also want to know the property name, right? Remember, we need to get the property name. We've got the property ID, but what I don't want inside the dashboard is I don't want the property. I want the property name to go here, not the property ID. How do we get the property name? If we only have in our property, let's go back into our transactions database, transaction right here, transactions database. If I only have the property ID here, how do I extract the property name? We can use a formula in that. So let's do that. Let's add a formula. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that formula down here. I'm going to put the formula here so that as we put in, let's say as VBA is going to put in our property ID. So as we put in our property ID, I want the property name to come up here. So how do we do that? Well, we can use an index match, just as we always do. So equals, I'm going to wrap that on if error. And then what we're going to do is we're going to index the property name. Index property name. We've already got that in a named range here, property name, and we're basing it on, let's go back up here where you can see it, and we're basing it on a specific property ID. So we're going to use a match formula to locate that. We're going to look up what? I'm going to look up the property ID right here. I'm going to start it off on that. Then what I'm going to do is I want to look up an array. It's going to be based on the property ID. So property ID, I want an exact match, and I'm going to be focused on the column 1. If there's an error, I want to show blank. So what that's going to do is put that specific property right here. So now we've got it right here. So I've got that formula right located here inside V1. Good. Now what I want to do is I want to know all of the unique properties, right? Let's say we've got, I want to know all the unique properties. I've got to loop through the properties. In other words, I need to get all the transactions for specific properties during a date. But how do I know which properties had transactions? Well, what I want to do is I'm going to run an advanced filter. I want to know only the unique properties. So if I run an advanced filter, and I get only the unique properties, it's going to return 1 and 2 because only 2 different properties were used in this. Property number 1, property number 2. So that's exactly what I want. So let's get some unique properties. So let's put in this. I'm going to copy that here. And I'm going to get the unique properties. I'm going to put that, let's just say right in here. I'm going to paste that here. And what that's going to do is put in this. So I'm going to call this unique properties. So that's going to get us our unique properties ID. So when I run an advanced filter, we're going to get that right here. So it's going to return 1 and 2. Then all I need to do is loop through these to get that. Great. So we've got that. So let's continue on. Let's write a little bit of macro and then continue on. So then what we want to do is we want the results. We want those results to come in. So how do we know that? Well, we can put our results right in here. Let's go ahead and bring this over one more, and I'm going to put the results in here. All right, good. Let's bring this down a little bit, bring these down one more row with the data, and so we can put this in, merge and center this, and so we can see exactly what we're doing. We understand that we don't need that big of a column. So wrap that text, bring it in that dark purple. Okay, so we have our unique properties, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to put in, I want a transaction name, right? So we want to also, what else do we want? We want the transaction ID, we want the property ID, the transaction name, and everything else. So we're going to pull the name, our name. So what we'll do is I'm going to take this form and I'm going to bring it down here. So every time I can bring it down here. So I've got the property name right here. I've got the property ID here. And now what I want to do is I want the transaction name. I want everything else. What do I want? I want the transaction name. These are going to be the results that are going to come inside our dashboard. Transaction name, right? We want the transaction name here. We want the date here. And make sure that when you do it, let's just copy the bits. Even better. I think it's exact. Transaction name, I'm going to copy the headers because I always want the original data. Paste that in here. I want the date here. Copy that, even though I could just type it out, but exact is very important. If there's a difference, it's going to create a problem. So what else do I want inside a report? Let's go back into the dashboard. So I want the date, I want the unit, the details, the type, and the amount. So let's put that inside here. So back into the transaction, we want the unit number here. So let's go ahead and put in the unit. And that's going to come directly from here. So we've got the unit, bring in there. So date, unit. What else do we want? We also, after the unit, we also want the details. So let's put in the details here, copying those here, details here, because I want them in a specific order on the dashboard. It is that order that I'm placing right here. So details, and then after the details, of course, we also need the type and amount. So once we put that in type and amount, so we can copy those 2 fields. This is the exact order that I want on site. So we're going to get all that data, bring in all this data here. Transaction name. Remember, this information, transaction name, is going to go directly in here. So the first thing what we're going to do is I'm going to put in the property, put in that property name. Then I want all the transactions for that property. So that's why we only have transaction name. So I'm going to bring that information in. Then we're going to go to the next property, put in that property name, bring in the transaction details for that name, and then of course the total. So we can have properties here in the transaction. Okay, good. So we kind of understand exactly what the result is we're looking for. And now we've set up the transaction database for this information. So again, we're going to determine all the properties based on this, all the unique properties based on these dates here inside the transactions. Then we're going to get the property name. I want that property name. That's going to help us out. Bring in the results for the transactions for that specific property. Once we understand all the transactions, we're going to bring those amounts in. So let's write up the macro. Now that we're ready, now that we're set, I'm going to save our work here, and then we're going to go back in. We're going to create a macro. So let's go into the dashboard macros. We don't have any macros here, and that's the first one we're going to create. So let's do that right now. Sub dashboard, we'll call this income, INC, expense, and then report. So that's really what we want. So the first thing we want to do is I want to clear any previous data in our staging area. This is our staging area. We want to clear all the data out here. So let's do that right here. So we're going to go all the way from AA6 all the way through AG and down. Let's clear the contents of that. So bringing it down here, I'm going to bring this up. We get a little more screen space there. And so first of all, we're going to focus on this sheet 6. So sheet 6 is our dashboard. Sheet 6, you can rename that if you like. Dot range, and then we focus on AA6 all the way through AG, and then just go use a larger 999 dot clear contents. Okay, clearing the contents of that. Okay, so now what we have, now what I want to do is I want to set that initial report row. Remember, we're going to start out with a property, and we're going to go down next. So I need to keep track of what row we're on. So we want to set a report row. So that's really important. Why don't we set some specific variables up here that we're going to use for all the reports? So let's take a look at that. So we're gonna do a bunch because we're gonna need a lot. So let's start out with that. I want to focus on, let's dimension the last transaction row as long. We're going to need to keep track of the transaction. The report row, I want to know what report row we're on as long. These will serve for other reports as well. Also, the last result row, when we run an advanced filter, we're going to need to know the last result row as long. And also, if we loop through the results, we're going to need to understand what result row as we're looping through. So result row as long. And also, when we do the transactions, we also want to know the last transaction result row. Last transaction result row as long. And when we loop through the properties, we're going to also want to know those. So we're going to focus on that. So the property row as long. And then of course we're going to loop through the last property row. So let's continue on. So last property row as long. Also, we loop through the units, unit row as long. We'll use these for other reports too, so that's going to be helpful. And then let's see what else. The last unit row as long. Last alert row as long. And then also the report range. I'm going to set that report range. So let's do that. Dimension the report range as a range. Okay, so that's going to be helpful. When we bring in those reports, I'm going to dimension that as a range and set that report and bring it in. You're going to see how we do exactly that. So now we've dimensioned everything that I need. At least we may add a little bit more later, but we're good on that. So first thing we did is clear the contents out. Now I really want to take my attention off of this particular sheet and go to sheet 9. So let's set the report row to 6 initially. We can do that now. So report row, and that'll grow, equals 6. So that's the starting place. Report row starting position or value. Okay, so now that we have that, now we can take our attention to our transaction. I want to take our attention to the transaction database because this is where a lot of getting our data is going to come from. So that, of course, is sheet 9. Sheet 9 is our transaction database. So with sheet 9, we're going to do a lot of work with that. The first thing what I want to do is I want to know the last transaction row. So the last transaction row, that's our original data, equals, we're going to use it Excel. I use AutoHotkey to automate that. That's a free software. So that's the last transaction row. Okay, we need that to, if for some reason it's less than 3, then we need to exit out of the sub. If last transaction row is less than 3, then exit sub. So assuming because we have no data, there's nothing else we could do. We could probably, let's go to no data, then go to no data. That's another way to do it. Data, because that way at least what we'll do is we'll put the headers in. What do I mean by that? Let's just say there was no data. If there's no data, then what I can do is at least copy this information and bring this into the main report area, bring this in, and then it would show these headers but no data. So that's kind of nice. So we can do that too. Kind of gives it a nice idea as opposed to just showing blank and nothing showing up here. Okay, so continuing on inside our transactions. So now what we do is we've ensured that we actually have data. So now what we're ready to do is run our advanced filter. And our advanced filter, we're going to run that initial advanced filter based on S2 to S3. And what I want is the unique property. I want all the property IDs here, the unique property IDs here. I want to loop through all those property IDs. So I want all the transactions, but I only want to know the property IDs based on the days. So we're going to look through all these transactions. We're going to get the unique properties for those based on these dates. So in this case, 1 and 2. So let's do that. It's just right because I want all the unique properties. That's all I want to start out with. So we're going to do that right now. So I'm going to run, let's just use an auto hotkey again. And that's going to automate that, but I'll update that. So that just helps me type in. So we're going to start out in A3, right? We're going to have to change that because that's automated. A3 is going to go all the way to J. Actually, if we're only focused on the properties, we really need to go from A to B in this particular one. So that's all we really need. A but we're basing it on date, so we do need our criteria is on date, so we should go A to F at least. That's the minimum. But if you're not sure, just go all the way to the end just to be safe. So we'll do that. A through J, we're going to go that. Now we're going to focus 3, 8, not 2. 3 is where our headers are. Make sure you're on the right row. Now our criteria is going to be focused on this. I'm really focused on these 2 dates here. So this is our criteria. S2 through T3, S2 through T3. That is our criteria, so that's what we're going to be putting in here. S2 through T3. That's exactly what I want. Now we're going to focus on the results. So where do I want the results to go? Remember, I only want, in this advanced filter, I only want the unique property IDs. So that is located in W3. W3 is where we're going to put this. So we can clear this out. Just put in W3. We want unique true. For sure, we want the unique records. What that's going to do is it can give us a list of property IDs. That's what I want. I want to loop through those properties IDs. So now what I want to do is I want to know the last result row based on that data that just came in. I want to know that. So let's focus on that. The last result row is equal to, and then I'll use Excel, but I'm going to change this to column W. I want the last row of properties. So, and it's going to be based on those 2 dates. Now, if the last result row is less than, in this case, 3, right? If it's less than 3, here's 4. If it's less than 3, we should probably just change that up there. I don't really like that. I don't like it's inconsistent. It doesn't make sense. So let's just go ahead and merge and center. It's not consistent. So this just, even though I don't need the space, unique, and bring it up here. I like that better. So okay, so we have unique properties here, so that's what I want. So make sure we put it on W2 in our results. Our results are coming to W2, not W3. I like that better. And then our last results row less than 3, then go to no data. Okay, no data. When you do that, make sure you put at the bottom, let's put that in right now, no data with a colon, so we know where to skip to. I don't want to forget that part. Okay, so we know in both of these instances it's going to drop down here, but we can continue on. So now what we know, we have our property ID here. Now our results are going to come, so if it's less than 3, we know we have no data. But if it's not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through these. But before I do that, what I want to do is I want to bring in those property IDs. So now what I want to do is actually I'm going to bring it. I want this based on this property. So I'm going to take whatever's in here. Let's just say our results turn out 1 and 2 and 3. So let's say that's our results, which that's what it's going to look like pretty much. Then what I want to do is I want to take this property ID and I want to place it right here. I want to do that for 2 reasons. One, I want to understand what, as soon as I change this to 2, right, this building, this formula here is automatically going to change. So I'm going to know what the property name is because that's going to be based in V1. I'm also going to set up for a brand new criteria. I'm going to run a brand new advanced filter based on these dates, based on this property. What I'm going to do is then pull in all the transactions based on those dates, based on that property. So it's only going to pull in that information. Those are the results that I'm going to place directly in here. Once I have those results, I can bring them into our dashboard here. So I'm going to bring them into our staging area here. So first I'm going to put the property name, then I'm going to bring the results here, then I'm going to go to the next property, and then I'm going to do the next results. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing. It's a really comprehensive report. So hopefully you'll be able to follow along. You guys are really smart and you're doing great. All right, so let's continue on. So with our macros, so what we've got the results here. Now what I want to do is I want to loop through those results from 3 to the last results row. We need that last results row, taking whatever property it is and placing it directly into U3. That's going to do 2 things. It's going to generate that name and it's going to give us our criteria to run our report. So let's do that right here. So we've got the last result row. Now we're going to run a loop. So for the result row is equal to 3, in this case 3, right, to the last result row. And then next, always close our loop, result row. So inside that loop, again, we're going to do just what I said. U3 is going to take on our property ID. So dot range U3 value is equal to, what's it going to be equal to? W and whatever the result row we're on, equals dot range W and the result row dot value. This is the property set property ID. So that sets the property ID into U3. Okay, good. So now that now we're ready to run. Now I'm ready to run a brand new advanced filter. We have the last transaction row. We can run a brand new filter, right? Based on, this time it's going to be based on our criteria here. Okay, it's going to include this information, and our results are going to come here, all the way from here, all the way down to here. Okay, so let's put that in right now. Let's write that advanced filter. So again, we're going to use my automated there. Okay, we're going to, again, A3, we could just actually, A3, we'll write it again, 3 all the way through J. This time our criteria is going to be a little bit different. Our criteria is going to be based on this S through U. So our S2 through U3, right? Because we're going to include the property ID in this. And our results, where do we want the results to come? I want these specific results to go all the way from, let's take a look at here, Y, transaction name, all the way through AD. Y2 through AD, that's where we want the results of that to come. So Y2, let's change this to Y2 through AD. Now we got all our results coming in there. So now Y2 through A2. Okay, now let's set up our, now we want to know the last row here. We probably don't need this property ID here. I think we don't need this one. That way, just need the unique. We don't need, because we're not bringing over the property ID. It's not necessary. Only want transaction name through amount, right? Only want the transaction name through amount. That's it. That's a property ID we're going to set. We'll automatically set in a moment. Okay, so we've got that. So now what I want to do is I want to know the last result row. So let's go ahead and put that in here. So we've just run our advanced filter, and now what we want is the last transaction result row. Last transaction result row is equal to, again, it's going to be based on, of course, what's located inside. Let's go back to the transaction data. It's going to be located based on Y, because Y, transaction name is required, so that we can use. So it's going to be based on Y. That's going to get us our last transaction row. Now again, we want to check to make sure that there actually is data. If the last transaction result row, make sure I spell that right, is less than 3, then go to, we're gonna, in this case, I want to skip property. Probably just go to skip property. I want to go to the next result. Then let's try, then go to next result, right? There's no data for that property. So let's go next result here. We're going to skip, basically we're going to skip that property because there's no data for that value. No, although there should be. I can't imagine there wouldn't be, because if the properties are here, there would be, but just in case. Okay, so now that ensures that we have information. So now what we can do is automate that. So we're going to then copy the information too, but we want to make sure that we add in that property name. Where's that property name? We know it's located here in V3, but where do I want to put it? I want to put it inside the dashboard. I want to put it directly in AA and whatever the report row is. That report row is starting off at 6, but it's going to change. So let's do that right now. AA on the dashboard, which is sheet 6. So let's focus on that right now. Dashboard sheet 6. So sheet 6 dot range AA and the report row. Let's double check that variable there. So I've set it up here. Report row located right here. Report row. That's the one I want. Okay. That's making sure that's spelled right. Report row dot value is equal to what? Where's our property located? Our property located is right here in V2, V1. V1 is where it's located. That's what I want. As soon as I put that property ID, it changed here. So V1 is where it's located. So dot range V1. That's our property name. Put that in property name. Okay, now that we have our property name in there, we're good to go. So we can continue on. All right, good. You know, it's kind of confusing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down here. I don't really like it. Okay, still property 2. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the property name in here. So it's clear. It should have been done before. So I'm just going to write in property name here. Bring this over here. And then what we're going to do is property name. So that way it's fine. Property name. Okay, good. So it's going to come from V3. I like that a little bit better. V3. Much clearer. So as soon as we put, again, as soon as we put in the property ID here, it's going to change automatically. Now we can simply see there's no property 3. That's fine. We only have 1 and 2. So good. So now it's going to come in V3. So we'll just keep this empty. So property, everything's on the line here. I like that better. So V3 is going to be our property name. Now we're ready to bring in all the transactions that come. It's just with 1 line of code. So let's do that right now. So the first thing what I want to do is, now that we've added the property name, I want to put in, let's take a look in the dashboard. I've got the property name here, but I don't want to start the transactions here. I want to start the transactions 1 line down below. So let's increment the property row by 1 in the next line of code. So we can do that here. So report row equals report row plus 1. Okay, increment report row. Okay, not property row, report row. Okay, so now what we're ready to do is now I've incremented 1. Now I want to bring in all the transactions. So we're going to focus on sheet 6 dot range A, B, and what? And the report row, and what? And all the way through, we're going to focus on through AG, and what? And the report row plus what? And the report row. Now, if the report row is starting on 7, right? In this case, 7 or whatever it is, we know that we've got to add in. So it's going to be the property row plus how many, right? How many? If our transactions are starting on row 3, right? Our results from our property transaction database here are starting on row 3. We know we need to add it based on that. So how is that? Well, what we need to do is simply do the report row plus the last transaction result row minus 3. Last transaction result row, my report row, plus the last transaction result row minus 3. That's going to get us equals what? Equals, going to base dot range Y3 through A, D, and the last transaction result row. So last transaction result row. So that's last transaction is this row right here. The last transaction result row minus 3 plus the last transaction. This is going to bring over income and expense transactions. Great. So now that we have that, we've brought that over in. So what do we want to do now? Now I want to do a few things. Now I want to put in a total row. Total row. Where is the total row? So let's do that. I want to add in. So let's see, where should we add in that total row? I'm going to put the word total, let's say in AF. Let's go ahead and look back on the dashboard. Perhaps in AF, I want the amount's going to be in AG. So I'm going to put the word total here. So it'll be something like total, and then I'll put the total amount here. So let's add that in right now. So back inside the transaction database and back inside the VBA, let's do that. Sheet 6 dot range, and then we'll focus on AF. And what row are we going to write it in? Right, I want to do is actually going to be in the report row, in this case -2. So I'm going to take this, right? This is our last one. This is our last row here that we focused on. But this time I'm going to paste it and report row, but in this case not -3, -2, because I want to run row down. Then we'll update the report row after this. -2 dot value equals, and then put in the total colon. That's it. Okay, so add in the total. So, but then I also want to add in the actual total, right? I want to put the word total in a, of course, let's go back into that. I'm jumping around here. Let's put in the transaction right next to it so we can jump back. So I want to put the total in, and I want to actually put the total amount located in AG. So it's AG that's going to take on this. So in this case, what we're going to be doing is just copying this, pasting it here, and then I'm going to change this to AG. So what is that total? That total is basically, well, the best way to do it, we can put that total in a format. We can make it really simple. So why don't we do just that? Let's go ahead and add in a total, and we'll put that inside the transaction database. So we have our information here, but what if I just put in, let's say, the total right here? I could put it in right here. Total, we know it's equal to the sum of whatever this amount is. So all we need to do is just bring it down to a large row. Let's say 999999, right? So then as soon as we add data in there, as soon as I start adding transactions through our advanced filter results, it's automatically going to total up. I think that's kind of a nice feature. It's easy to use and it's simple. So all we need to do then is just take that total, whatever's here, in AE2 and put it in. So let's do that. So let's put in equals AE2 equals dot range AE2. That's a good. Let's put it in total. Okay, good. So now we've got the total. Now what I want to do is I want to update the report row. So I want to get ready. So the report row, in this case, I'm going to skip down. So the report row, because we got to get ready for the next property, equals the report row plus the last transaction result row. Good. So it's going to loop through all the properties and update. It's going to update the report row. So that updates it as we loop through that. Okay, great. So now we've got that. So now we're just going to, but I want to make sure that we're clearing the results for each property. So what I want to do is I just want to, before I loop to the next property from Y through, let's say AD, I want to clear those results. So let's do that right now. So dot range, just in case, Y3 through AD, and then just use large dot clear contents. So let's clear those out. Dot clear contents, clear results. So it's going to get it ready for the next one. Clear results, ready for the next property, the next advanced filter. So now we can loop through that. Okay, good. Let's take a look at how that works. See if there's any issues with that. All right, see if there's any bugs with that. I'm going to run it. Okay, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look inside our dashboard here. That looks almost pretty good. All right, I like the way that looks. We've got details, we've got unit numbers, we've got information, we've got types, total, income. Okay, good, but I do want to add some additional formatting on that because I want those totals to be bold. So we're going to add that in, and I want to add in some more information. Now we're going to bring it over. So let's do that. Let's actually add some conditional formatting. And so I'm just going to highlight all this as far down as you want to go. It's fine. And then what we'll do is we'll drop this down for a moment, and then we'll go into conditional formatting, new rule, and I'm going to use a formula. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to maybe bold and underline the property so that we know that we're on a specific property. So let's do that. So equals, in this case we'll go equals AA6, but I want to create this for every single row below. So I'm going to remove the $sign. I don't want it absolute on the row numbers. In this case, does not equal empty. So in case anything in row 6 and A and down does not equal empty, and that happens on that specific row, actually, or the whole row, it wouldn't matter because there's nothing else in there. I'm going to format that. I'm going to give it a specific format. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it, let's say, bold, and we could also probably underline it too. We can use an underline. Let's see, a single underline. Let's take a look how that looks. And remember, that's going to be applied to, okay. And that, yeah, that's nice because I've got the bold. And now I want to do something with total, right? But in this case, I want to see only in the words total. So let's highlight this, right, all the way down as far as you want to go. It doesn't matter. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a new conditional formatting, new rule, okay? Use a formula. And in this case, we're going to focus on AF. So AF starting at 6, but again, no $sign on that. And then we're going to say equals, in those cases, in instance where equals total, colon. So if it's specifically that, what do I want to do? I want to give it a format. Again, let's do that. Why don't we give it a, in this case, we'll do a border. Maybe we'll do a top border here. We'll do a font. We'll do a bold here. I think that would be good. And let's take a look at, click OK, and then click OK. That's nice. There we go. So now we're ready. Okay, good. Now all I need to do is take all of this information and bring it from our staging area into our main report area. And I want to make sure we're copying not only the formats, but the column widths and everything as well. So let's take a look at that. How are we going to do that? So we can do that with the rest of our code. So the first thing what I want to do is focus. We're good with, let's take a look here. I'm good with this sheet. Now we're going to focus on our dashboard sheet. So we're going to focus on with sheet 6. Okay, now we're going to focus on the dashboard sheet. Okay, let's get rid of that space. We don't need that. Okay, so what are we going to do? The first thing I want to do is I want to set that report range. That report range has already been defined up here as a range. So we're going to do just that. So set the report range, and it's going to be equal to, let's say, RNG. It's going to be equal to dot range. We know we're starting at AA4. AA4 through AG, but what's the last row? The last row is, of course, the last report row. We've already done it. The last report row is based on whatever report row is here. So, and it's not going to be value, and report row. Okay, so there we're good to go. Okay, not value. Okay, it's just the, and now what we're going to do is we want to copy that. So report range dot copy. We're going to copy that, not column, copy. Copy, where are we going to paste it? I want to paste this entire range. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to paste it directly inside E4. So let's put that inside there now. So dot range E4 and then dot paste. Okay, dot paste. And I want to paste all. I want to paste special and then paste all. Paste everything, right? But when we use paste all, it doesn't paste the column width. So we want to do that separately. So I'm going to do, once again, paste special. I'm going to copy this here and paste it right in here. Actually, we can remove this so you can see the automated dot paste special. In this case, what do I want to paste? I want to paste the column widths. I want to paste all the column widths, okay? Perfect, that's what I want to do. Okay, now we'll just select something else, and I also want to create a pie chart with this too. Dot range F3, and then we'll just select that, maybe something else, select, so we can select out of whatever's been selected. Okay, let's take a look at that. I'm going to save our work, always important, and what I want to do is I want to run this report when we do something. So I'm going to copy this report. When do I want to run this report? I want to run this macro when I select D4, right, or when the report row, either way, the selected report row is 1. I also want to select, I want to put in the report number here. I want to know the select report. Let's put in that. B3 equals 1. Let's set a report number. That keeps a track of we know what number. So let's do that. Dot range B3 dot value equals 1. Set the report. It helps in the future. Set report, not 100% required, but it will help in the future so you know what reports. When you need to refresh a report, it's kind of nice to know which one is based. So we need, if we change a date, I want that report to refresh, but how do I know what report to refresh? I know what report to refresh because there's a 1 in the selected report. We know it's report number 1. Great, so I want to run this report when I select on D in that. So let's go back inside that, back inside the dashboard, sheet 6 dashboard. So now we're going to select on, so now if, right, target dot row, this fuser, we could do that, equals 4, then I want to run the report. Perfect, but I want to actually, so I want to run this report, so that's good. So now I've got that. Let's take a look at that. Nice, that's what I want, except I really don't want those grid lines here. Let's try that again. That's better. I like that better. No grid lines. Okay, now we've got a nice little report here. Keep in mind that, let's say unit, notice we set the unit number. If I run it again, it's going to create a problem. But what? So I want to copy over the column width. So we know that unit number's got to increase. So what's going to increase to? It's got to be at least 10. So let's make it a little bit bigger, 1043. So I'm going to go over here. So we're copying the column width. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to go a little bit above 10. Let's say 1043. That's what I want. So now when I rerun the report, it's automatically going to be that column width side. That's exactly what I want. Okay, now, but when I run another report, I need a macro that's going to actually clear all this out. If I'm running different reports, I need another macro that's going to automatically clear this report out. So how do we do that? Well, let's write that macro now. And we know it's pretty simple, but we're going to go back into the dashboard macros here. And I'm going to go up here because it's the first thing I want to write. I'm going to call this sub dashboard, let's cache dash clear report. Okay, so what do we want to do that? Inside that, I just want to basically run, not the sub here, no underscore there. Okay, so when I run this, I basically just want to simply clear all the ranges. So starting with let's say E4 all the way over to a large number. In case we have large reports, we could just go to QR whatever. E4, that's what I want to clear that range out. Not clear contents, but clear the actual range. Dot range, oh, let's select a sheet. Oh, we don't need a sheet. Sheet 6, we don't need with sheet. We do need it with sheet 6. Dot range, and then what is that range? E4. Let's start out with E4. All the way through, okay, let's just use a large number, and then 99999 dot clear. So we're going to clear everything. That's going to clear the contents and the formats. We do want to make sure we're clearing those formats. Okay, good. So what I want to do is I want to run this macro automatically before we select any report. So that means when I select this report or any report, the first thing I want to do is clear that out. As we run more reports, you'll see how important that is. So the best thing to do is down here on selection chains. Let's go out of here, go back to the selection chains. So the first thing we want to do is run that macro. Not that. I want to copy that macro here, go back into there in the dashboard. This is the macro, dashboard clear report. That's the one I want to run here. So now we can exit out of that, paste that in here, clear main report area. Okay, good. So we have that now. So now as we write more macros and do more reports, we can simply write them. So if the target row is 5, then run this, 6, then run this. Okay, so I think you're getting the hang of it now. But let's create a little bit more on this. I'd like to have a little pie chart on that. All right, so what I'd like to have is not only have this information, but it would be really nice if I had some sort of a little bit of a donut chart or something that shows the profit and loss for the period. It'd be nice to show, the totals on a chart. But I need some data for that. So why don't we put some data here and we'll get that inside there. So let's go ahead and write that now. Put in I want some totals and information. So I want to know what the income was for the period. So we'll put in period income. And I also want to know the expenses. So period expenses, and of course I want to know the profit for that, so the total profit for that period. Now we've got some named ranges, so that's going to really help us. So all we really need to use is the sum if formula to help us with that, since we've already got that. So let's try that. So we're going to use sum ifs because it's based on, I want to know all the income for the period. Remember, the period is based on all the transactions based on between these two dates here, between these two dates. That's what I'm focusing on, between the front. So we're going to use a sum if because I want to base that on that. So equals sum ifs. And what are we summing? Our sum range, of course, is the transaction amount, right? Focus on the transaction amount. That's what we're summing. So let's sum that. So sum if the transaction amount, and it's going to be based on what? We have different criteria. So the first thing is going to be based on all the transaction dates. So the transaction dates is going to need to be, of course, greater than or equal, of course, the from date and the from date. So it's got to be greater than or equal to that. And what else? The transaction date has to be less than or equal the to date. So quotation less than or equal and the to date, right? To date. So that's important. And also what I want to know is in this instance, I only want to know the income, right? Only going to focus on the income. So we wanted the transaction type. Remember, we put that in. In this case, it's only income. So income is all I want to focus on here. Okay, that's all I want. Okay, good. So that's 2550. Perfect. So now I'm just going to basically copy this over, bring it down here, and all I need to do is just change it to expense. There we go. So now we can know the expense. Now we've got the expense for the period. Now I want to know the profit. Well, the profit obviously is going to be the income minus the expenses. So it's going to be income minus the expenses. That's going to get us our total profit. Okay, nice. Now I've got the data that I want, but what I want to do is I want to take that data, I want to put it into a donut chart. So why don't we just highlight that here, and then we'll go into insert, and maybe I like the donut chart a little bit. In this case, we're going to do the donut chart. That's kind of basically what I want, but we need to make it look better, and we need to place it where we want to, but let's just put it down here for now. I'm going to move it in a moment because I don't want it, obviously I want it in our main area, but let's work with it here. Okay, but I want to take a look at this. I'm going to update the color. Let's format this data point here, and then what we'll want to do is I want to go into the fill. Let's give it a solid fill here. And I'll choose, this is going to be income. I want to choose something similar to the blue that we've been working with. So that's good. So that's good. And then what I want to do is in this, let's see the expenses, I'm going to make those red. So let's go ahead and click on the solid fill. I want those red. And then make that red color. And then the profits, total profits, I don't want those yellow. Those should be green. So we're going to go into the fill and make those green. So the solid fill, let's go to this green. Let's use this green right here. Okay, I like that. So the profits, the expenses, the period are kind of a nice color. Don't like the way it looks quite yet, but we got some work to do on this. So we don't want a border and I don't want to fill. So we're going to format. We don't want a shape fill, so no fill on that and no outline on that. And then let's see, we want to probably increase this a little bit, but let's focus, let's put a shadow on this. So let's go ahead and shape, put in a shadow on that, bring it out, and then I'll probably make it, I don't need an outline, but I do want more effects. I think maybe probably want to put a little bit of a bevel, make it jump out. That's kind of nice, but we do need some data labels on that, don't we? So we're going to add the data labels, but I don't like that. I'm going to increase this. I want it bigger than that. And of course I want let's make it bigger, and then I want these data labels a little bit bigger, and of course we want to put them, let's put them in white font, white, and then make them bold, and then increase them. Obviously we need to increase them. Okay, I like that there. Okay, let's increase this a little bit too. Now we're getting to a nice thing. Okay, I like that. I like that way it looks, but I want to put in the profit. I want to make it clear. In other words, now let's move it over to where our destination area is. We know what it looks like. And then of course I want to format these. So let's do that. Let's format those under currencies. Okay, good, but I don't want the decimals there. All right, let's bring that down. Perfect, that's the way I like it. Okay, good, so we've got it nice and big, nice and looking. Now let's move this where we want it, our original location, because I don't want it here. I want to put it right about here. Right about here is where I want it. And that's good. That's exactly where I want it. So now we can see it because now it's good. But I want to add one thing I want to put in that. I want to make that profit really clear. Good, so now we've got it, but let's take a look and add some profit. But I want to put in the profit right in the middle. And I want to put some text in there, so we can use a circle for that. So why don't we write that in? So what do I really want to happen? I want to put in maybe like the total profit, and we know what the profit is, but let's put it inside maybe some type of text string, and then we can take that in there. So I'll show you how it's going to work. So let's just put in, we'll just call this profit, call it profit text. Okay, that's just the name of it. Then we're going to get the actual value of it. So it's going to be equals, in this case, let's call it profit. I want the profit on the top line, profit, and then on the lower line I want something else. So how do we do that? I want to drop it down. So I'm going to put in character 10. Character 10 is the return character, so the return carriage, and it's going to allow us to drop the totals down. So then what do I want to put in? In this case, I want to put in, and I want to format that. In this case, I want to format the $ text. So we're going to format that. What do we want the text? Well, in this case, I want it to be whatever is in, this is our original data. I'm going to locate it here in AJ5. That's where it is, AJ8, I should say. So now let's give it a specific format. I want to give it perhaps something like just a $ currency. You can change this. I'm going to use the underscore here, and then, of course, the parentheses, and then a $, probably a $, here. Then what do we want to do? Then just the asterisk there, so we can use any type, anything beyond that. Then that's our wildcard. Then a £sign. We're going to give it that formula, comma, and then pound, probably 0.00. Okay, that's good. And then I'll just do one more underscore and then close the parentheses. Good, that's it. And then we're going to close that. That ends our format, and then just end the parentheses. Okay, let's take a look at that. All right, we don't need the double quote. All right, we don't need the double quotes there. Okay, that's it. That's exactly what I want. Perfect. So let's take a look at that. So now we have profit 1950. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to create just like a little bit of a circle inside here and then put that text. So let's insert shapes. I want to put a circle here, and we'll drop it down about, say, like right here. Okay, and I'm going to move that to the middle, center that. That's the way I want it. Give it that same fill color. I want to do that shape fill, the same green color that we used. And I'm going to also give it the same effects that we used, which is the shadow here. And also we also gave it a bevel here too. So this bevel here. Perfect. Now what I want to do is I want to assign a text that equals. And then what we're going to do is equals to this. Boy, this is our text. So now we've got the profit. Good. Let's just, obviously we don't want to automate that. So let's bring that up there. I want to make sure it's perfect circle. So 1.4, and then we're going to do the same thing here, 1.4. That's going to give us exactly here. Now all we need to do is format the text and center it. So home, center that here. And also what I want to do is I'm going to go into the size and properties and make sure that we remove any spaces. We don't need any margins around there, so we'll remove the margins. Now all we need to do, of course, is take the, let's just increase, make it white again, bold, increase it. There we go. Now we've got something nice. I like that. Let's bring it down a little bit. Okay, I really like that. That looks really good. I like the way that that looks. And we got a nice graph here. Perfect. So now we're good. So now what I want to do is I want to group this and this. I'm going to hold down the control. So I'm going to take that chart and that space, and I'm going to group them together because I'm going to work it out. I'm also going to right click, size in the properties, and I want to make sure that we're moving but we're not sizing out. I want to size this, okay? I want to assign a name to it too. So I'm going to give it a name, PL chart. And I want to do that because I want to hide and save it. So we'll call it profit and loss chart. So that way, the idea is when I select a different report, notice I want this thing to go away too, right? So when we clear the reports, this should go away because this is not for the report. So how do we do that? Well, we just need to take PL chart and hide it. So let's go back into the VBA. Notice we have this macro called clear report. And inside the dashboard, we have that clear report. So now all we need to do is sheet 6 dot shapes and then PL chart dot visible equals MSO false. Okay, great. So I'm going to copy this, but now what I want to do is now I've got it hidden, right? Let's take a look at that. Now when we click something else, it's hidden, but when I click here, I want it to show up only for that property. How do we do that? Inside that specific macro, inside the macro income expense, we actually need to show it now. So I'm going to go down here, going to copy that here. Let's go back, copy that, paste that in here, dot visible equals MSO true. So now when we run that report here, it's going to automatically run. Now when we run any report, it's hidden. Perfect. So now we got, the only thing is, you see, notice the kind of a flash, right? We can fix that by doing this. I'm going to turn off screen updating, but what I want to do is let's do it right here. So application, dot screen updating equals false. Now make sure that when we turn this off, we also turn it on at the end of the macro. Make sure there's no exit subs. If we have an exit sub out here, we need to make sure that this screen updating is after any exit subs. So before we exit out of the macro here, let's get out of here, go up here, and then paste that in and make sure to make it true. Okay, so now we've turned on and off screen updating. So now you notice it's really fast. Clears it out, perfect, and clears it. Okay, great. So now all we need to do is just write the small little macros to display the tenant detail list and the monthly tenant payments. Perfect. So let's go ahead and write that in right now. Okay, good. Monthly tenant, let's put in a different macro. I want to put in upcoming. I really want to know what reminders are coming up. Upcoming reminders, because that's going to be easy. We're running out of time, so I want to show you how we can do that instead of that. Okay, upcoming reminders, I like that better. Tenant detail list and upcoming reminders, those two I want to write right now. So let's go inside that, and we've got our dashboard macros here, the module here. We're going to focus on the next one, and this is going to be the tenant detail list. I want to know the list of tenant details, so we're going to write that macro right here, sub dashboard tenant detail list. Okay, good. So we're going to focus on, again, we're going to use application screen updating. I'm going to add that in a moment. But first thing, again, what we want to do is create a staging area. So we want to know, what do I want to see in this report? Let's create that staging area and show you just the columns that we want. And that's what we're going to focus on. So let's make it easy on ourselves and start in with BA. So notice we focused this one on AA, so I'm going to go all the way to BA. So I'm going to bring these columns, just shrink them down or almost to nothing, and we're going to start off on BA. Now what we can do is just copy what we've done here and then just make some changes. That way we don't have to reset the formats and everything else. So inside BA, I'm going to then just paste inside BA4, which is our starting row, and just paste those in. So now what we're going to do, let's just call this tenant detail list. And what do I want to show? I want to show the building or property, right? Obviously property. And I want to show, let's say, the tenant name. And I also want to have the unit number and perhaps the unit type. And what else do we want? After the unit type, I probably want maybe the phone one, and email one. Just the first one is fine. And then perhaps, let's say, a total rent paid. That's going to be nice. Okay, so now we'll highlight these and then we'll double click them. That's going to expand them accordingly. Okay, so now we're going to obviously need to, these are going to need to be brought out more. We've got some here, we need to bring those out more. Okay, so good. So now we have the information here. So now how do we write this macro? So we know we've got the information here. This is big. We don't need unit 3, just the unit number, not 3. All right. Okay, so now we have that. Let's go ahead and write the macro so we understand we're going to bring in the information. This, of course, is going to come, information is going to come from the units database here. So it's this database that I want to focus on. Okay, inside the units database here, we're going to add, again, we're going to run an advanced filter and bring in that data. So what do we want to create? I want to have some results here. So what do I want? I want the unit ID. Again, I recommend doing what I do is just copy and paste it, even though it's very simple, just to avoid errors. Copy that. Paste it in here. It's a little bit slower, but it's much more accurate. Then I want the tenant name, and I also want the unit number. I want the type here. I want that, and I want the phone 1 and phone 2. So let's copy that, and then we're going to paste that right in here. So I've got unit number, tenant name, and then phone 1, phone 2. So let's put in that, and then I also want tenant. So let's take a look at that. So then I'm going to paste that right in here. Now we have so unit ID, tenant name, unit number, type, phone 1, email 1, and I also want the total. I want the total number here. So let's just put in total here. So now we've got the total. This is going to be the rent total, whatever. So it's that total that's going to be directly inside our dashboard here. So total rent paid. Okay, so we have that information here. So then all I need to do is I need a formula that is going to take our tenant total rent paid based on the unit, based on this unit ID. So how do we do that? Well, we know we've got transactions, right? Transactions database here, and then transactions database. So all we need to do is we've got a unit ID here. We want to make sure we've got a named range for that. So let's do that. Let's go into the name manager. We have transactions. We have a lot, but let's add in unit ID. So we have transactions ID. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go into new. I'm going to add one more, transaction unit ID because I want to know all the income transactions based on a specific unit. So I'm going to paste that in there, but now of course we're focused on column C. So I'm going to change that to column C so I can track all of the transactions income in this case for a specific unit. Click OK. So now we have transaction unit ID. So that's going to help us in a formula. So what do I want? So if I have a specific, let's go back into units database. If I have a specific unit ID, let's say unit 1, I want to know the total, right? So I'm going to put a formula up here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that formula down here. So it's going to be based on this. So what is that formula? Again, we're going to use sum ifs based on multiple conditions. So sum ifs, what am I summing? I'm summing the transaction amounts, but it's going to be not all the transaction. Transaction amounts based on, of course, lots of criteria. The first thing is going to be based on the specific unit ID. So transaction unit ID, that's the one we just created, is going to have to be equal to whatever's here. And as we drag that formula down, we can create it for multiple units. So what else is there? Well, I also want to make sure that we're only focused on income accounts. So transaction, right? I only want the income per unit. So I want to know the total that they paid. So we're going to focus on that. Transaction type is going to be income. So income. What else? Of course, it's going to be based on transaction dates. We're still under a date range based on the formula, right? I want to know based on, like, if you have multiple tenants per year, you may only want to know a specific year. So we also want to base it on the dates of that dashboard again. So the transaction date, again, just like we did before, quotation greater than or equal, quotation and from date. And you probably know the next one. Transaction date also less than or equal, quotation less than or equal, and the to date. So that's all the, not today, to date, this one here. To date, that's the one we want. So now we've got it all. So that's it. So when as soon as we add a transaction, of course, we can wrap that on if error. If there's none, it'll put 0. That's fine. So as soon as we add in a tenant unit number, we can put it in that. So I guess unit number 2, we don't have any income for that, but we should probably put in that transaction. So there's no unit ID 2. Okay, so we have that. Perfect. So we have nothing there. Let's take a look in the transactions. I want to look inside our transactions database and look into to see if we have any income. Okay, we do have income, but let's take a look at why that's not calculating. Here we go. So unit ID 1, we have 3. We don't have any unit 2. So we have unit ID 2. We could probably change this to 2 just in our transactions so it's a little bit clearer. 2 and 2. So we have those, but we can change it. So there was no 3. So let's take a look. So now actually let's take a look inside the transaction database. So we have 1, 3, unit 3. Okay, that's fine. Now we understand it. Units database. So unit 3 would have a total. There is no information for unit 2. That's fine. Okay, great. So we've got the information here. Now what we want to do is run our advanced filter and bring that information over. So how do we do that? We do that through the macro. So the first thing what I want to do inside our dashboard is clear the data. So BA through BG, I want to clear any existing data. So that's the first thing we're going to do inside our macro. So continue on with writing this macro, and we're going to say sheet 6.range. We have it up here. Let's just copy and paste this and update that so we can easily go ahead and set that up here. I want to do all that because they're going to be doing the same exact thing, so we can just focus on this here, these 3, and then we'll go ahead and copy that. Now paste it down here. Going to update the range. This one in case it's BA6 all the way through BG9. Clearing the report row in this case is we're going to also start out. We also want to start out in row 6, so that's fine. But this time we're going to focus on a different sheet. We're focusing on the units, and the units, we'll take a look here. Units up here is sheet 8, units database. Sheet 8 is what we're focused on. So with sheet 8, and what do we want to do? Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that we turn screen updating back on before this macro ends. So I don't want to forget that. So true, and then end with. Make sure we have that. Okay, so now we're going to focus on sheet 8. What do we want to do? I want to loop through all the properties. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to know all of the properties that exist, right? I want to focus on all the properties. Where are the properties located? Properties located in our property database 7. So I want to loop through all of these properties because I want to get all the tenants from these properties. So this is sheet 7. So we're going to get the last property row. So let's go ahead and write that. Even though that's not specific on sheet 8, last property row is equal to sheet 7. That's where our property is located. XLR, that's dot range. We don't need the extra dot. XLR, that's going to get us our last property row because I want to loop through. So our first row, just in case we don't have any property. So if the last property row is less than 4, then what do we want to do? Go to no data. Put in no data. And then down here, right down here at the end of the macro, we're going to put in no data. So no data. Okay, so assuming that it does have data, now we're ready to run our loop. So for property row equals for to last property row, next property row. Close that loop. Okay, so now we have the property. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to clear any previous results, right? Now we're going to focus on our units database. So I want to clear any results here. All the way from V to AB, clear any previous results. V3 all the way and down. So dot range V3 through AB, and then just do 999, and then clear the contents. Dot clear contents, okay? Clear previous results. Okay, once we have that, we're ready to run. Now what I want to do is I want to loop through the properties, right? Obviously, but what I want to do is I want to take that property name. We know the property name inside of property data. We're looping through these. I want to take whatever's in B and I want to place that directly in our dashboard. I want to place it right here in our property in BA. So let's do that first inside our dashboard. So sheet 6, that's our dashboard, range, and it focused on BA and the report row dot value equals sheet 7 dot range B and the property row dot value. Property, and I'm going to call this, we'll call this set property name. Okay, so now that we've set our property name located in that, now we're ready to move. What I want to do is I also want to increment this report row. I want to increment it 1, just like we did before. Report row equals report row plus 1. I want to increment that now, right? So again, I've placed the property here. Now I want to list the tenants. Next property, list the tenants, okay? So we've got that, but what I want to do is I want to create an advanced filter based on this property, right? I want to know all of the units based on a single property. So inside the units database, we have our criteria here. We set it before. So if I set the property ID in 03, if I set that property, where is that property ID? It's going to come directly from here. A and the property ID, we're going to put that directly inside here. Then we're going to run our advanced filter. So all we need to do is set it up because we already have our criteria. So dot range 03 dot value equals sheet 7 dot range A and the property row. Okay, dot value. Set the property ID criteria. Now that's good. Now what we want to do is I want to get the last unit ID. So last unit ID. So what is that? The last unit row, I should say, last unit row. Where is it located? Equals, and that's going to be in dot range XLF. But now we only need this once. I don't want to do this two. I'm going to put this up here. In other words, the last unit row is not going to change, so we don't need to keep doing that for every property. So we can bring that all the way up here. The last unit row, I only need to do that once. And then in this case, the last unit row, of course, is 7. So it's going to go loop through all the units. So once I have the last unit row, we're going to set it up. Now we're ready to run our advanced filter. So let's run that. Let's automate that so it makes it a little bit faster. So now we're going to focus on that. So now we've got that automated text. AutoHotkey helps me with that. We're going to focus on A3 is our advanced filter. Obviously, they're not the transaction row. We don't need that. We're going to focus on, in this case, we're going to the last unit row. And then it's going to go all the way through, not Z in this case, but L, or in this case, we don't really need phone to an email. So we really need I, right? I is our last. We're just focused on I. So A3, not 32. A3 through I, and the last unit row, our criteria, we're going to focus on only those units for a specific property. That criteria is going to be O2 through O3. So change that to O2 through O3. This is a marathon training. Okay, so now what we have, so continuing on, so what do we want those results placed? I want those results placed right here inside. Let's continue on. V, obviously not the total because that's calculated. V through AA, that's where we want the results to come. So V2 through AA, that's what I want. I'm going to put the unit results here. Let's just put that up here so we know what's going on here. Going to merge and center that, and then give it a bold, and then give it a color just so it's consistent with the rest of what we're focused on. Okay, so this one, this is a formula, so this is different. I'm going to give this a different color just so we can understand that. Okay, so that's a formula. We don't want to mess with that. So the idea is to bring in the detail here. Then the idea is to take this formula and bring it all the way down here so that totals are calculated for every single unit. So that's what we're going to do. So we've got the results all the way through AA2, and now we're ready to determine the last row. Let's get our last row of our results, the last result row. So what would that be? The last result row equals, we're going to use V. We're going to use column V. That's going to give us our last result row. So now we have our last result. We do want to check to make sure that there actually is data. So if the last result row is less than 3, then go to next result. And what that's going to do is just going to skip down to the next. So then we want to go next. So then I'm going to add that here before the next result. Okay, it's going to skip that property since there's no units for a specific property. Okay, so continue on, assuming that we do have data. Now all I want to do is just bring that information over. But first I want to bring that formula over. We know that. So now I want to bring the formula in. The dot range AB3, that's the total formula, AB3 all the way through AB and the last result row, and the last result row dot formula not value dot formula is equal to what? Is equal to AB1 equals dot range AB1 dot formula. What's that? That's the total income. Let's call this total income formula. Okay, so we have the total income formula. It's going to bring it down for all the units. So very good. That's exactly what I want. So up until this point, now I've got all the data in here accordingly. So now all I need to do is bring this data directly inside the dashboard. So starting with BB all the way to BG, bring in the information directly from the units database. So let's write the line of code to do just that. Sheet 6 dot range BB and the report row and through all the way through BG and what? And the last result row. We can actually add the report row. We need to add the report row plus the last result row minus 3, just as we did last time. Minus 3 equals dot value equals, what's it going to equal? It equals basically dot range V3 through AB and the last results row and the last result row. Okay, great. That's going to bring in all of the data over. Then what I want to do is I want to increment the report row. So now instead of report row plus 1, I want to increment it 2. I want to skip a line for the property. So report row, but now what I want to do is I don't want to increase that. So now I want to add it based on the last result. Report row equals report row plus what? Plus the last result row minus 2. Okay, so we're going to subtract that out. Minus 2. Let's take a look at that. Good, let's take a look at that and let's save our work and see how we're doing on that. Okay, I'm going to run this report. Let's go ahead and let's run it now and see if we have any issues and we can fix them up. Okay, let's take a look at that. Looks okay, and there's no data on that. Let's go ahead inside our dashboard here. Take a look at that. We've got the property. Tenant name doesn't look like it's missing. Okay, unit number. Okay, we got to fix that. Otherwise, we're good to go. Okay, let's fix that. I'll update that. Okay, we need a few updates on that. Let's go ahead and put that in there. All right, it should be W. Obviously, I'm not going to bring in the unit ID, just the tenant name. We didn't have the tenant name. We didn't have that. W, unit ID, right? Tenant name through total, right? We're not using the ID. We're not bringing the ID over. That's fine. Dashboard, tenant name, no ID, all the way to tenant bid. Okay, let's run that again. Take a look at that. See where we are in that. Okay, it looks better. We got tenant name, unit ID, looking good. We'll add in some formats for this here. Put in the $, and then good. Let's take a look at that. I like that. We've got again, I want to add some conditional formatting here. Conditional formatting, new rule. I want to bold, use a formula. In this case, we're focused on, again, BA in the column down. I want to make those bold and underlined. Does not equal empty. So in those cases, I want to format those bold, and then let's go ahead and make it underline, single underline. Okay, so that the properties are underlined. Okay, I like that. Unit number, we just need to center these accordingly. Let's center that. And we've got a tenant list. We don't really have unit types and phone, email. I didn't put that in the data, but that looks good. Okay, so we've got the totals paid. There's no information here, unit ID. We only have information. All right, that looks pretty good. Now all we need to do is take this information and bring it inside our main area. So how do we do that? Again, just like we did before. In fact, we can just copy and paste it and make the update. So all I'm going to do is with sheet 6, I'm going to copy this, all that we did in the last report, paste that right in here with sheet 6 and make the updates. So the report range in this case is BA through BG, and everything else, set the report. This report number is going to be 2, not 1. We don't need this. We're not adding this chart here, donut chart, so we don't need that. Let's take a look at that. Save it, of course. Now what I want to do is I want to take this report and run it based on a selection. So again, let's go back into the dashboard sheet right here. When do I want to run it? I want to run it on selection change. If the target dot report row equals 5, then I want to run this report, then run this particular report. So now let's take a look inside here. Okay, back inside here, select on here. Nice tenant detail list. We just didn't add any information in the tenants, but I like it. It looks really good. So now we've got our tenant detail list. We've got one more report to write, upcoming reminders. Let's go ahead and write that right now. Okay, just as in the other reports, we're going to create a staging area and then bring it over. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy some of this and then bring it over. So pretty much actually just go with 3 columns on this one. And then so inside we'll just, again, consistency helps. So we'll bring these over and I'm going to shrink those. And we'll start with CA in this case. So let's do that. So CA, I'm just going to paste it right in here. This time we're going to call this upcoming reminders. So upcoming reminders. Let us know which ones we have coming up. And then we'll just go reminder. We'll put in the ID here, reminder ID, and then maybe the reminder name. And then perhaps the scheduled. When is it scheduled for? Scheduled for. So we know when the reminders. And then we'll double click on these, automatically increasing the column widths here. So good. So let's create this. And all right, I like that. That's enough. So all we really need to do is pretty much the same thing. Again, with our alerts and reminders database, again, all I need to do is know the alerts. I want to know which ones are upcoming, so it's not going to be include any alert on. We can use the same criteria. We can use the same results here, and we just put in the alert ID, the name, and the date. So we just pretty much all I need is, again, this information here and this information here. So we can run it and then just bring in the data in these 2 columns. I don't need to do anything else. Let's make it easy on ourselves and copy and paste what we've done before. So inside our alert main macros, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this. We've already run the sorted on. We've already done everything. So let's copy this. Let's see, at least up until this point, running our advanced filters. So focus on with sheet 10. That's the one we're going to be focused on. So I'm going to copy that, and that's going to help us inside. So the first thing we want to do is of course we want to clear out inside our dashboard. So let's write a macro, go down here all the way inside or back inside our dashboard macros here. I'm going to write that 3rd dashboard macro right now. So sub dash upcoming reminders. So now we've got that. Again, what I want to do is I also want to clear the range just as we've done. I'm going to paste this in, and we're going to use that in just a moment, and make sure that I've done end with, right? End with for the sheet, right? This is for the sort here, but we need with sheet. So with sheet 10 and then end with. Then we're going to do with sheet 6, right? We could focus on the dashboard. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is, again, clear out any any additional previous data here. CA 6 through CC and on down. So we'll do that. Sheet 6 dot range CA6 through CC 9999 dot clear contents. Okay, clear previous report data. Okay, we're going to focus on sheet 10, last alert row. We noticed that. This is going to run our advanced filter. Going to base it, of course, we're running it basically based on only alerts that have not been alerted. We're going to get our results here. In this case, I'm going to bring the alerts here in 2 lines of code, one here, and then I'm going to bring in one here. We could probably add details in here. I probably should add details, huh? It's kind of nice. We got the extra space, so why don't we do that here? Let's bring this over here, drag this over here, and then add in details here. I think that's kind of nice too, details, because we've got the extra space, so why not? So scheduled for details. Okay, so we've got the reminder and ID. ID we don't need, but just bring it in case just for the fun of it. bring in information here in the scheduled for. Okay, so let's do that. Let's add in that. I'm going to save our work just because I sometimes forget, and bring it in. So now we're going to bring in, so we've got our results here. This is going to bring in all of our results, and it's going to sort them. Okay, I'm going to sort them ascending. Let's sort them ascending. I like that better. Ascending, so it's the earliest first. And then to continue on, now we're going to focus on with sheet 6. With sheet 6. So let's take a look here, making sure we have everything here. Okay, I like that. Let's continue on. So now what I want to do is just bring in our results. So we've already run the macro. Okay, so now we're just going to bring in the data. So I'm going to bring in 2 different areas. So we're going to go back into the alerts here, bringing them on NO through NO3. This is our results, NO3 through O in the last, again, the last alert row. Make sure we've defined that last alert row right here because that's what's important. So with sheet 6, I'm going to focus on, first thing what I want to know is if there's no data. What if there's no data? I want to make sure that we have that. So I want to set the report row. I need to know the last report row. So let's take a look. How are we going to base that last report row? It's going to be based on the last row. For example, if our last report row in this case is 5, right? 5 for the results, then we want the last result row in this case is going to be 8, right? We're starting here at 6 in this one, and we're starting here inside our alerts on 3. So we need to increase by 3. So if our last results row is 5, we need to make it 8. Okay, so continuing on. So let's set our last report row. So if the last alert row equals, or let's just put less than 3. We need to set a minimum less than 3. Then set the report row, and set report row equal to the minimum. I want the minimum. That means there's no data. So what's the minimum? Is going to be 5 minimum. That brings our headers. So the report row equals 5. Else what? Else the report row equals the last alert row plus 3. Okay, so we've set the last report row based on that, just in case there's no data. So now we can continue on. Now we know the last report row. So I'm going to bring in CA6 through CB. Dot range CA6 through CB dot CB and the last, and I just report row, we've already said it, and the report row dot value equals what it's going to equal. Again, we got to put sheet 10. That's our alert sheet. So sheet 10 is what we're focused on. Dot range, focus on the results data of just those two, the unit ID, the alert ID, and the name. So N3 through O in the last results row. N3 through O and the last alert row dot value. And that's going to bring over the alert ID and the name. Okay, I'll just put the and sign and name. Okay, so now I want to bring the details and the date time now R and S. Okay, so let's just copy this without the comment here, and then we're going to paste it in and just make it updated. In this case, we want the details and the date and time, bringing that over, and that's going to come directly from R through S. R through S. And where's it going to go? It's going to go inside our dashboard. It's going to go directly in CC and CD. So all we need to update is CC and CD. Now we've got our information updated. Now it's pretty much the same as everything else. So let's copy this, go back in here, and then paste it down here. So again, then we'll double check it. Our set report range is going to be, in this case, CA4 through C, and guess CD in this case, CD and the report row. That's going to be our range. Everything else should be the same. Our report row, our report number is going to be number 3. Okay, good. I like that. Let's go ahead and save it. Check for any issues on this. Okay, let's take a look at that. Let's take it. It didn't. Good. Upcoming reminders. Bring that in here. Upcoming reminders. We got to clear. So it's fine, right? We didn't clear out the previous, but that's fine. It looks good. We just have to win. Of course, when we actually run the full report, everything's going to be cleared like it did now, right? And now when we run it, let's take a look at now. upcoming reminders. That looks pretty good. I do like to center these, but everything else. And I like to add conditional formatting. I'm going to do that before I let you go. I'm going to add some conditional formatting here to make it look a little bit better. Okay, so now all we need to do is just add this macro. Let's copy and paste just as we did. This repetition is going to help you learn a lot faster. And so there's two things we need to do before I let you go. When we change a date, I want to make sure that we're also refreshing the report. So make sure you catch that before we go. Okay, so last thing, if target.row equals 6, then dashboard upcoming. Okay, so now let's take a look at that. Now it's 6. Good. No, we're getting there. Let's add some conditional formatting in just a little bit. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to add some conditional formatting, just some odd rows probably to make it look better. So now conditional formatting, new rule, 2 conditions, equals, and one is I want to make sure that there's a value in CA, right? And then we don't want the row here, no $, does not equal empty, and probably it's, let's put it on only on even rows. So, and then I got an automated formula here, comma, mod equals mod. Okay, so mod basically it's the mod of row 2. So that's going to be the even rows. So on even rows, I want to color it a little bit. And now format this. So now you can also use the destination cells. If I want to use the destination, which is very helpful, I'm going to use, in this case, we're going to use E6. Okay, so we can use the destination as well. So E, make sure that we're removing that. Okay, the destination E6 format. Let's give it a little bit of a color here. We'll use just this blue, not that dark. More colors, right? Just a little bit lighter here. Click OK, OK, and click OK. Okay, now we're going to run the report. There we go. That's nice. You see, I use the destination, right? It also colors out. Perfect. And what I want to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste this format in right here. Paste it, and we could do that for the tenants as well, right? If we want to do that, paste the special and paste the formats in here. Click OK, and now what we want to do is just left justify that. Now I'm going to increase that conditional formatting, manage rules. Now I'm going to take this rule here, and I'm just going to do the applies to, starting with this. In this case, I'm going to change the applies to all the way to here and down. Okay, click apply, click OK, and now we'll take a look at this, and we'll run this report. Okay, and use the destination cells. I forgot to use the destination control. Okay, conditional formatting, manage rules, right? We're focused on the destination, E, not E here. Let's take a look. What is the destination here? The destination is F. F is the destination, not E. F is where our property is located. That's where our tenant names are located. Okay, click OK and apply. Click OK. Now let's take a look. Okay, that's what I want. All right, good. One more thing, and then I'm going to let you go. When I make a change to these dates, I automatically want our report to refresh. So how do we do that? It's going to be on change of F3 or H3. F3 or H3. So when we make a change of it, that's focused on the dashboard. Here we are in the dashboard based on change, but I'm going to make it based on change. We were on selection change. Now we're based on change. So what do I want to do there? So let's take a look. If not intersection, we're going to be focused on 2 cells, F3 or H3. F, let's finish that then, right? Okay, and close that loop. F3, comma H3. F3 or H3. Either one of those cells, what do we want to do? In that case, what I want to do is I want to refresh the row, but I have to know what report to refresh. Why don't we just copy and paste this and then make some changes on that? But now it's not target row. We don't know the target row, but if the report row, basically we can set the report row. So why don't we do that? We can dimension, we'll do the report number. Dimension report number as long, and set the report number is based on B3. Report number equals range B3. This is where the report number comes in handy. Dot values, report number. Now, if the report number, let's copy this, report number equals 1, then, right? So paste this, equals 1, then we're going to run this report. If it's 2, we're going to run the other report, and so on and so forth. So we just have to paste this in here and then change the numbers accordingly. So this is 2, this is 3. Good, so now we've done that. Let's save that work. Take a look at that. So now when we make a change to either one of those, let's change this to 6-1. There we go. Okay, so now it automatically refreshes the report based on those days. Notice there's no values in here. Change it back to 1-1. Perfect. And we can do the same thing for this. 6-1 automatically changes. Obviously, there's no income there. Cool. That's just fine. And changing it back to dates. refreshes the report. All right, wow, it's been an epic 4-part training. Thank you for sticking with me. For those of you who did stick with me on all 4 parts, I hope you appreciate it. It's one of the best ways to learn when I do these things from scratch. So thank you very much. If you do appreciate these trainings, I would really appreciate it if you haven't yet, grab the 175 workbook. Those are 175 of my best workbooks, and it's just $66. That's only 37 cents per workbook. So that would help us out a lot. I appreciate it. I'm going to include the links down below for you to grab that. Thank you so much. Brand new training next week. Don't miss out. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.